Returning to our top story, moments ago, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke to reporters at the Pentagon. It was his first time addressing the prince since he was hospitalized for cancer treatment.
I want to be crystal clear. We did not handle this right, and I did not handle this right. I should have told the president about my cancer diagnosis. I should have also told my team and the American public. And I take full responsibility. I apologize to my teammates and to the American people.
Joining us now from the Pentagon is CBS News national security correspondent, David Martin. David, good to see you. The reason I'm laughing is because it just said your title and didn't say your name, but we know that you are there and you've been standing by for us. We appreciate it. Let's talk about what the Secretary said about his recent hospital stay and taking ownership of his failure to to inform the Commander-in-Chief and also his subordinates.
Well, I think the headline is that he said he has apologized personally to President Biden for not having informed him of his original prostate cancer diagnosis, which is the reason he went into the hospital the first time on December 22nd. For prostate surgery, and then, of course, he did not tell him when he suffered the complications over New Year's and ended up in the ICU. To me, when he walked in to the press briefing room, he was noticeably limping and walking very slowly. Being careful when he stepped up onto the riser for the podium. So he is clearly still dealing with the after effects of that. And in fact, he came down to the briefing in a golf cart, which he said was the first time he's actually used a golf cart to get around. I asked him if he's confident that he is going to be able to recover fully enough to continue in the job as Secretary of Defense, which is a very demanding job when you put the long hours back to back with overseas travel. And he said he was confident, but he is still undergoing rehabilitation, and he does not have a timeline for when he is going to be free of pain in his leg.
I mean, I thought that his explanation, though I'm sure he's going to get a lot of criticism for it, was something that I think a lot of American men would understand. A cancer diagnosis is certainly concerning, but he's in a very important job, and while many people might want to maintain privacy, it's not an option when you're the Secretary of Defense in that way. But speaking of that, and particularly at this time when there's so much tension in the Middle East, the Secretary also took questions about the recent drone attack on American forces in Jordan and what we're learning about that and how the U.S. is responding. What did he say?
Well, at the very end of the press conference, actually after they had called an end to the press conference, he remained at the podium for a brief time, and he was asked, one of the questions he was asked was, why don't you just do another retaliation strike like the ones you've done before, just one and done, and it's over. You know, we know that the administration is planning a more of a bombing campaign against Iranian targets in Iraq and Syria than simply a one-and-done retaliation strike. And he said, well, the enemy here, by which he was referring to the militias which are conducting these attacks and the Iranians who are backing them up, the enemy does not have a one-and-done mentality, and so we're not going to have a one-and-done mentality. And then he said, and I've got a lot more forces than he does, all of which is true. The U.S. almost always wins the battle of arms. It's the contest of wills that sometimes the adversary is able to outlast the U.S.
All right, David, thank you very much.
Sure thing.